Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We talked about it Wednesday afternoon. Got a lot of players to talk about taking official visits to Ann Arbor over the weekend. In between Wednesday afternoon, we last talked about Michigan, and now Friday afternoon, we have another massive addition to the official visit weekend, and four-star wide receiver Andrew Marsh, who cancels his Oklahoma visit, now going to be in Ann Arbor this weekend, his second time on campus in the last 3 weeks. And all of a sudden, you're sitting here with Andrew Marsh, a guy that we talked a lot about in this 2025 cycle, just not necessarily connected to Michigan. It sounds like Michigan is right in it for one of the best wide receivers in the class of 2025, a really exciting development and just a ton of talent that's going to be on campus for Michigan this weekend. Another thing to note, this is the last official visit weekend for a lot of these kids. They're going to go into decision mode. And I think Michigan has an opportunity with a lot of their top prospects on campus to kind of make that last pitch, make that last impression for a lot of these kids. Massive opportunity. I think we know there's a lot of momentum building for Michigan on the recruiting trail. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Michigan fans. It's no secret. The boys are big Michigan fans. We've talked a lot about this program on the recruiting trail. The amount of support y'all continue to show to the fellas, it truly does mean a lot. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And for the Michigan fans, we got a lot of commitments that we're going to be breaking down over the next couple of weeks. Fired up to get into the official visit list. And one of the hardest things about putting together this episode was just choosing between the players that I wanted to talk about. We have 17 recruits on campus. I wanted to just highlight some of my favorite names. And we got to start with the newest addition to the official visit list, and that is four-star wide receiver Andrew Marsh. Again, was supposed to go to Oklahoma, cancels that, comes to Michigan, second time on campus in 3 weeks. And I think there's no way around it. This would be one of the most talented wide receivers in really the last decade to come to Michigan. And you look at Andrew Marsh, a guy that is a top 50 national prospect, and we've talked a lot about him. I've always said, I kind of think Andrew Marsh is a little bit underrated in this 2025 cycle. He doesn't necessarily have the blazing track times, although he has a track background that's quite impressive that some of the five-star wide receivers have. Doesn't have the crazy frame that some of these five stars have, but you watch the film and say, this is one of the most complete wide receivers that you see in the 2025 cycle, an extremely polished route runner who knows how to create separation and then work after the catch. He can work vertically as well. There's just so many different ways that Andrew Marsh can not only get involved in this Michigan offense, but attack opposing defenses. This is truly, in my mind, one of the most complete wide receivers, one of the best wide receivers in the 2025 class. And we've had this discussion a lot in the comment section. Michigan needs to put a priority on getting some of these difference makers in the wide receiver room. Andrew Marsh would be one of those difference makers for Michigan. Very interested to kind of see how this comes out after the official visit weekend, because every kind of sign you look at, canceling his official visit to Oklahoma, which was considered one of the main contenders for his commitment, coming onto campus for Michigan 2 times in the last 3 weeks, it sounds like Michigan is really in the thick of it for wide receiver Andrew Marsh. Next one I want to talk about, and the Michigan fans know how I feel about Andrew Oish. This is a Michigan guy. You look at how Michigan wants to build their offense. We want difference makers at the tight end position, specifically in the passing attack. And you look at Andrew Oish, 6'5", 210. You dive into the film and say, this kid with a 6'5" frame, he moves like a wide receiver. And again, he plays a lot of wide receiver at the high school level, probably plays the tight end position when he gets to college. You look at Andrew Oish and you say, Michigan needs difference makers in the passing attack. And Andrew Oish is just one of those guys. He's a matchup nightmare with the 6'5" frame. If you want to put a bigger body on him, he's going to run right by you. If you want to put a smaller defensive back on him, there's not many defensive backs that can deal with the frame that Andrew Oish has. And you look at Colson Loveland and all the success that he has had in this Michigan offense, commanding the middle of the field, being that massive presence for Michigan quarterbacks. I think Andrew Oish can be a very similar kind of tight end for Michigan. And I think the one question mark you might have is, all right, he's 215 pounds right now. And Colson Loveland coming out his senior year was only 220 pounds. mean, he's at a 6'5" frame. You can easily get him up to 240 pounds, put some weight on him. But what you can't teach is how functional he is for that frame. Michigan uses their tight ends a lot. And I think what they can sell to Andrew Oish is, hey, look at guys like A.J. Barner, Colston Loveland, Luke Schoonmaker. We develop tight ends. We give them opportunities to produce in this Michigan offense. And at the end of the day, there's just not many Power 5 programs that can sell that kind of usage for a tight end in their offense. Michigan can be one of those programs. I think Michigan has a great chance at this kid, and I think would be a difference maker for this Michigan offense. Last offensive skill player I want to talk about, and a guy that we kind of highlighted as not a must-get, but one of our top targets in this 2025 cycle, 4-star wide receiver Taz Williams. Honestly, pretty similar game to a guy like Andrew Marsh, not quite the frame that Andrew Marsh has. Taz Williams is kind of built like a running back. And he's a guy that, yes, he can work vertically down the field, has some really good ball skills for his size. But this kid after the catch is just a different kind of cat. Kind of a Samaj Morgan-ish in terms of, hey, end around screens, short intermediate route concepts. Let him use his short area quicks. Let him use that. It's not necessarily a big frame, but there's a lot of weight on this kid. He works through contact exceptionally well. One of those guys that just get the ball into his hands and go let good things happen. Another difference maker for Michigan in this offense. I think Andrew Marsh, Andrew Oish, Taz Williams. I mean, 3 guys that just bring a ton of juice to this Michigan offense in the 2025 cycle. Now, we wouldn't talk about Michigan with the recruiting weekend if we didn't talk about some offensive linemen. I want to talk about Hardy Watts, and this is a name that a lot of the Michigan fans threw at me in the comments section throughout the last couple of weeks, went back into the film, and I think I accidentally watched his sophomore stuff the other week. I watched his junior stuff late last night. This kid's awesome. I mean, 6'6", 290, plays right tackle at the high school level. I think he probably kicks into guard during his time at Michigan. That being said, he has tackle athleticism. He has a tackle frame. He's a lacrosse player as well. I think this is a guy that gives you some versatility, kind of like we talked about Avery Gash the other day in terms of, hey, Michigan values guys that can play all over the offensive line. I always say this, go back to when Zach Zinner went down. We had to kick Carson Barnhart from tackle to guard. In terms of getting your best 5 out on the field, you want guys that can play both guard and tackle. Hardy Watts, one, is certainly that. More importantly, this kid's a technician. He looks like he's been in a college offense for multiple years in terms of how he uses his hands, how he gets off the line of scrimmage. This is one of the more polished offensive linemen that you see in the 2025 cycle. And the reason I like him at guard the most is when he's operating in a phone booth, when he just has hands on defensive linemen, extremely powerful, can move people off the line of scrimmage, can get up to the second level. You guys were right about Hardy Watts. I am all aboard Hardy Watts coming to Michigan. Next one I want to talk about, center Kaden Stran from IMG Academy. Now, he was originally from Detroit, Michigan, so that makes Michigan feel really good about this kind of recruitment. This is a guy that also plays all over the offensive line for IMG, going to be a starter his senior year. Phenomenal athlete. Now, probably doesn't have the power in his hands that a guy like Hardy Watts has, but you talk about that center position, double teams working up to linebackers, sometimes getting centers pulled out to the play side. This is a kid that can do all of that stuff. And I think with Kaden Stran, you're betting on that athleticism that he has and say, hey, if you're kind of lacking some of that pop in your hands, we can probably get that on you as you get into this Michigan program, get into the weight room, kind of get a little bit of that college frame going. What is harder to teach is the athleticism, the functional athleticism for this kind of body at 6'3", 295. Really, really good athlete, pulling to the play side, really good athlete, getting up to the second level. This is, I think, one of those offensive linemen that Sherrone Moore just sees as a center and sees as a guy that, all right, get him in this program, maybe takes a year or two, come year 3, year 4, this kid could be a very damn good center for this Michigan program. And again, being from Detroit, Michigan, prior to transferring to IMG, I think that puts Michigan in a really good spot. Now, speaking of IMG Academy, the last kid I want to talk about, linebacker, excuse me, Nathaniel AuuBoang. This is another guy that the Michigan fans who've been rocking with the fellas the last couple of weeks certainly know I'm a massive fan of. And You look at Nathaniel AuuBoang, one, he is just put together, for lack of better terms. He looks like he's been in a college football weight room for about 4 years. Don't see many linebackers with the physical development that this kid has, and he is just absolutely juiced up. And we talk about this a lot, having linebackers that can operate in space, cover a lot of ground, go sideline to sideline. That is a premium in the college football world today, especially with programs like Oregon, USC, Washington coming into the Big Ten. We need linebackers that can match the speed and athleticism that these programs are starting to put out, even Ohio State. You look at Nathaniel AuuBoang, he has all that athleticism and then some, closes the gap between him and the ball carrier at an exceptional level. He's extremely physical at the point of attack. And although maybe a smallish frame at only 6 foot, he's put together, has a little bit more room to put on some mass because he's pretty lean. This is a cat that I think, again, maybe a little bit undersized, more than makes up for it in terms of the juice, the speed, and athleticism that he plays with. Those are my favorite guys that'll be on campus for Michigan. It's a loaded weekend. There's a lot of guys that Michigan could be coming away with commitments. Again, if we get any commitments, I got the weekend free. We're breaking down Michigan commitments all weekend if and when they happen. Really exciting next 48 hours for this Michigan program. We'll keep you guys as updated as possible. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. Again, if you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.